This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Introduction. Communication refers to the process of transferring verbal or nonverbal messages from a sender to a recipient through an appropriate medium. Effective communication is an important aspect that determines an individual's level of success. Communication follows a process that comprises several components that facilitate the transfer of messages between a sender and receiver. The most important communication component is the message, passed to a recipient through a suitable medium. Another important aspect of communication is feedback. It is necessary to complete the communication process and ensure the sender and receiver understand each other. Communication barriers arise from differences in language, culture, religion, physical condition, and attitudes. However, several strategies are used to overcome these barriers and improve communication effectiveness. Process of communication and its components. Communication involves interaction between a sender and a recipient. A sender sends a message to a recipient, and the recipient sends feedback to the sender. Communication is made up of several components. They include sender, recipient, context, message, medium, and feedback. A message is sent by a sender through an appropriate medium to a recipient. The message should be in a form that is understandable to the recipient. The recipient then responds to the message in a way the sender understands. Differences between hearing and listening. Hearing is a process of perceiving and receiving sound through the ears. It is a non-conscious action that happens naturally. In contrast, listening involves hearing a sound and understanding its meaning. It is a conscious action that involves an individual's awareness and attention. An individual concentrates on the sound in order to comprehend the message that it conveys. An example of hearing is when an individual perceives a baby's cry. If the individual hears the cry and associates it with hunger, then that is listening. Hearing utilizes only one body sense, while listening utilizes all five senses. On the other hand, hearing involves only the reception of sound, whereas listening involves the observation of behavior in order to understand its meaning. They serve different functions. For example, listening enables individuals to establish and maintain strong relationships, while hearing does not. Formal and informal channels of communication in criminal justice organizations. Criminal justice organizations include courts, correction agencies, and police. In these organizations, both formal and informal communication channels exist. Formal communication channels include procedures that are determined by organizational policies. On the other hand, informal communication channels include any undocumented exchange of information. Formal communication includes upward, downward, and horizontal channels. Downward communication entails communication from the director to employees through different levels of command. For example, a company's CEO communicates new remuneration procedures to employees through his deputy, the human resource manager, and departmental heads. Upward communication entails sending feedback from employees to management. On the other hand, horizontal communication takes place within the same level of command. An example of horizontal communication is communication between a team leader and team members. Informal communication channels include verbal exchange of information without documentation. An example is when employees who were absent during a departmental meeting seek information from employees who attended the meeting. Barriers to effective communication. Barriers to effective communication include cultural differences, language barriers, organizational barriers, attitudinal barriers, interpersonal barriers, and communication channel barriers. If a sender and recipient do not use similar language, then effective communication is impossible. In addition, if the sender uses complex words that the recipient does not understand, communication becomes ineffective. Cultural aspects such as age, education, religion, ethics, assumptions, and gender create distance between individuals, thus straining communication. On the other hand, interpersonal barriers such as assumptions and perception render communication ineffective. In an organization, poor organizational culture and stringent rules and regulations hinder effective communication because they promote misunderstanding among employees. Communication channel barriers include the use of inappropriate mediums or conflicts between the intended meaning of a message and the interpretation of the message by the recipient. Many organizations have inefficient information systems that make communication difficult between management and employees. Attitudinal barriers that bar effective communication include distorted perception, poor understanding, personality conflicts, and underdeveloped interpretation skills. Strategies to improve communication. Strategies that could be used to overcome communication barriers include appropriate selection of media, active listening, simplification of organization structure, use of appropriate language, and giving appropriate feedback. It is important to select an appropriate medium of communication in order to ensure effective communication. For example, in an organization, the manager could use oral communication to convey simple messages to employees. On the other hand, complex messages could be delivered through documented communication channels such as memos and notices. It is important for individuals to listen attentively and carefully in order to get the message delivered. For example, a recipient could ask questions in order to clarify unclear components of a message. Organizations could simplify their organizational structure in order to improve the effectiveness of communication. For example, they can create a few hierarchical levels because the simpler the structure is, the more effective communication will be. Language is an important aspect of communication. It is of the essence to use language that the sender and recipient understand. For example, if both are English speakers, they should avoid using jargon or complex words. Another vital aspect of communication is feedback. To ensure effective communication, it is important for a recipient to give positive feedback. Even though feedback may be negative, it should be delivered in a manner that does not strain communication. Giving constructive feedback creates strong relationships between employees and managers in an organization. Conclusion. Communication refers to the process of transferring verbal or nonverbal messages from a sender to a recipient through a medium that is appropriate. Effective communication is an important aspect of achieving success because it ensures that any message that is delivered serves its intended purpose. Listening is an important aspect of communication. It is different from hearing because it involves understanding a delivered message. In contrast, hearing involves the use of ears to receive sound. Effective communication is hindered by factors such as language barriers, cultural barriers, individual and interpersonal barriers, organizational barriers, and communication channel barriers. However, several methods could be used to overcome the barriers. These include the use of simple language, appropriate selection of media, active listening, simplification of the organizational structure, and appropriate feedback. Did you like this Barriers to Effective Communication sample? To get more works like this one, make sure to check out the free database of academic paper examples at ivpanda.com. You will find thousands of samples for all your study needs, without even having to register.